All right, good morning. I'm super excited about this one. This is a conversation I get to have with a friend. I miss her face, so this is kind of fun. But she's also a peer, a colleague, a personal trainer, and a participant in my group PT classes when they run. So let me introduce you guys to Jolaine on the other side of the camera. Say something so they can see you.
Hello, everybody. Hi,
There.
Lo.
Hi. Awesome. All right. So yeah, the theme of today's conversation is kind of like we just got out of talking about special populations in class yesterday, well, video class, anyways. And so the theme of today is kind of in relation to that. As trainers, you know, we're going to work with lots of different types of people. Some people have injuries or illness or pain or chronic pain or stuff going on, and health and fitness is really important. It helps improve their quality of life. We want them to have the same benefits to exercise as everybody else, but the idea is that they need some help. They need to be maybe they need things modified. They need to have an extra layer of communication and empathy so that they feel safe. We don't want to exacerbate any of their issues. And so I think for a lot of trainers, you start at the ground floor and you kind of try to work with people that are sort of general fitness, participants, but then you end up learning more over time so that you can work with a wider group of people.
Mhm.
So there's always a question about, well, how do I do corrective exercise, or how do I do rehab, or how do I spend more time coaching nutrition or whatever? And it comes down to education, right? There's always certs that we can do to get extra education, but there's always kind of this element of like, but who are you? What is your own experience? What do you know? How do you empathize? What kind of style of communication do you have? What level of care can you take? And not everybody has sort of the soft skills to work with, maybe our clients that need, that little bit of extra care. So why I wanted Jolene to come on today is because she's really good at that in terms of who she is as a person, how she runs her business, the types of clients that she works with, what she's taken from her own experience, and how she brings that to how she serves her clients. I couldn't think of anyone better to talk about kind of the human side of this type of training. It's not a science conversation per se. But thank you for joining us, because like I said, I think you can offer some really valuable insights here. So I want to, go through your story a little bit. Can you start off by telling us, like, how did you get to become a personal trainer in the first place? What got you started?
Well, I never set out for it to be my career. I moved from an executive position in Edmonton, and we moved here, and I was skinny and really weak, and I was having back pain. So you always hear the best thing for back pain, you should work out. So I thought, I'm gonna work out, I'm gonna figure this out, gonna be stronger. And that was my reason for joining the gym. I'd never joined like a formal gym before. I was active in high school. I was a farm kid, and I was skinny. Like it just wasn't on my radar as something that I needed to do. So I initially joined a just ladies only facility, and at that time, okay, so I'm a lot older than you. But at that time, gyms didn't necessarily have a prerequisite of education for the people that they hired. So what I noticed right away was the program I was given from the person working that day was the same program they gave to everybody, regardless of age, goals, body size, body type, anything. So obviously I thought, okay, well, that can't be good or it can't be right. And I didn't want to be dependent on someone else to teach me what to do. I'm a learner just by my DNA. So I took the courses for myself so I could know how to help myself. And of course, BCRPA, weight room 1, weight room 2, you learn those. You remember those basics? And that was interesting, but it wasn't enough. So I went and took ACE PT certification, and still just doing it for myself. I wasn't doing it to start a career in that regard. So what I found was people started asking me what I was doing. And I had in that time switched gyms. I was now at a co-ed gym, but still just the ladies only area. And I felt safe and comfortable helping them there, but I wasn't employed by the gym at the time. So I realized I really like doing this. Like I really like helping people and it was really fun. And so I started working there. And and that was it. That's how I became a PT. And then of course, as you know, you keep learning.
I love it, because one of the things we talk about when we start getting into the section of like how to build your business and how to gain exposure and how to, kind of show people what you're doing is like your workout is a part of that process. So what you do when you work out is often when people watch you and they see what you're doing. And if you, so, like if you can move well, then people can identify that. And if they see you doing interesting things, then they're like, oh, I wonder what that is. So it's so funny, but like being a trainer who does a proper warm up, who focuses on good form, who has a well put together program, who pursues their goals with some kind of intentionality, who incorporates mobility and functional, all that stuff, that ends up being one of the ways where people are like, hey, what are you doing? What's that for? Right. And so, we can't underestimate the benefit of like, oh, this is a walk the talk lifestyle job, right? You can't just be really good at marketing yourself on social media and then end up with a full client base, because there's a human element, there's a relationship element to this, which it just sort of really naturally evolves. So when you started working out, you had a goal to get out of pain. You did, obviously. And like anyone who has seen you at the gym, you don't look like you're working out to get out of pain anymore. You look like you're, I don't know, about to do a Spartan ultra or like compete in a show. Like your training is pretty impressive at this point. But how did your own health and fitness needs sort of frame up for you or affect how you work with other people? Like your own background from pain and learning for myself and feeling weak and whatever. How do you think that affected the type of trainer that you are now?
Well, it's been like a 30-year journey. So my fitness needs and my health needs have changed dramatically in that time. As you know, it was 22 years before I even understood where that pain was coming from, because I didn't have a diagnosis. So my training at that time was like, well, if I can get out of bed, then I'm going to go and do my best, because I didn't know it was wrong. And so some days you can walk, some days you can't. The days you can, you go do something. So I think that experience of living through chronic pain, being undiagnosed, having to start from square one over and over and over because of, what I was going through, that's given me a lot of empathy. It also, I had to read and learn what was going on for myself. And in that process, I've learned what other people are going through as well. And so just that knowledge has helped. When I have other clients who are also autoimmune clients, I now understand just the terminology, even like what they mean when they say I have a flare. So I think just having that experience of chronic pain, the emotion that goes through that, the depression, you lose your sense of self, like the whole experience has enabled me just to have more empathy than I would have otherwise. And I guess the knowledge of what people go through. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, no, for sure. The point of this conversation was not to spend a bunch of time, learning about autoimmune stuff, but like we're finding more and more people are having that diagnosis. And I don't necessarily think that it's more people are getting this illness, this range of illnesses. I think it's that we're finally better at recognizing what it is, being able to put a name on it, and then have some kind of plan or some kind of structure for people like, hey, this is available to you. Be careful of this. Probably don't do that. So like, I think we're getting better at naming it, right? It's not like, oh my God, all of a sudden everybody's having no, it's kind of probably the same percentage as always. But like our healthcare system, our holistic care system is getting a little bit better at recognizing that. And so again, like for you, you said like 22 years or something where you don't know what it is. That's an incredibly difficult thing to go through because you just don't know. So it's
Yeah.
kind of the same thing when you look at fitness. When you don't know what, let's say you have a little bit of pain or discomfort, or you've had an injury, or you don't feel like yourself, even just putting on weight,
Yeah.
getting older, suffering the effects of chronic stress, that can make you feel like, well, this isn't who I am.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this idea of that disconnect. This isn't who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, in order to get back to something that feels like I have a little bit more control over myself, I have to go through this scary process
Yeah.
around people who know what they're doing, the risk of humiliation, the risk of hurting myself. It's actually hard to do. So like
Mm-hmm.
the resilience that it takes to get through that, that's kind of what I wanted you to be able to talk about here, was whether a client has an autoimmune issue or not, whether they have a knee injury or not, whether they've just gained 40 pounds, there's a human connection element needed in addition to the science of taking care of their program. That's
Mm-hmm.
going to be where we really are able to make the best connection and therefore make
Yeah.
the best impact with our clients, right?
Yeah.
So you've worked in a gym, you've worked in
Mm-hmm.
you've worked in a couple of different spaces. You
Mm-hmm.
currently run your own business. Tell us a little bit about how do you do what you do right now? What does your business look like?
Well, that's changed a lot too. So when I first started, and I'm sure every new trainer might feel this way, you say yes to everything and everyone because you want to work, you want to build your business, you want to get the word out, you want to learn, you want to grow. So that's how I started. I said yes to everything. And that was a bad idea. I ended up hurting myself, running myself into the ground, up at 3 a.m., doing my workout, clients at 5 a.m., all the way through the whole day. So I felt like a hypocrite because I'm preaching health and I'm hurting myself. And in the background, none of them know that I'm also trying to figure out a diagnosis. So now I have to put my health first. And so if someone approaches me and says, can you train me? It's like, I work these days, I have these time slots available. If this one is open, if that works for you, then let's do it. That's the first step. And if they don't fit into that time slot, then they either go on a waiting list or I'll refer them to somebody else. And I'm totally fine with doing that because for me, my priority isn't to have as many people as possible. It's to do my very best for the people that I have. So I think that's a big part of how I run my business. I'm not on social media. I don't advertise. I don't need to. Word of mouth is it. So when I started, we didn't have any of that. It was like magazines and newspaper articles. I know. So, and I never felt the need to be on social media. I don't need to show what I can do. I don't need to show myself. I don't need booty shots, and I don't need to advertise, you know what I mean? So it's just word of mouth. And the people that have been referred to me from friends have all been so fantastic that I find word of mouth for me has worked the best. That answer the question?
Yeah, for sure, an element of it. The other thing is I know, for example, part of what you do is you go to people's homes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Okay.
you don't work in a gym, you
Right.
are
Right.
a remote or direct to you business. So just tell us about that a little bit, because it's not as common, but I think it works
Uh,
really well for you and your clients. So what does that look like?
So I started in a gym, and I think everyone should. It's great experience, entry level. There's a lot you need to know. And that's, I think, kind of the best way when you're starting out. So right now I go to people's houses or outside, if it's nice out, or rec centers. But primarily it's just people's houses. So I have like how far I'm going to drive, and if they're within that and they fit in the time slot, then I'll go to the next step and find out if who they are works for me, what their goals are, what their injuries are, their history, and all of that. So yeah, I go to people's houses. And because I think most of my clients are seniors or they're people dealing with chronic illness, I don't need a lot of equipment. Everything is portable. It's really easy. I carry it all in a bag, and I can kick someone's butt with not a whole lot.
Absolutely. Okay, so then let's talk just a little bit about it doesn't have to be anything specific, but when you think about training older adults, when you think about training people that have, former injuries, like not acute care, you're not a physiotherapist, but like they've had surgery, they've had injury. It just means that we have to take some special considerations in how we train them, what their range of motion is, how much of a warm up they need. Hey, I can do this movement, I can't do that movement. How do you do an intake? How do you screen for that? Just give me a little bit of an idea about how you gather the information that you need to be able to take great care of them.
I'm pretty particular with gathering information at first because you can really hurt someone, especially if they have chronic illness. So in their intake, of course, if they're 70 or 80 years old, they have a lifetime of injuries accumulated and movement patterns that aren't that great, and of course their health. So I'll go through their health history and whatever medications they're taking, their injuries, like we would for anybody, right? But I'll spend more time at that. Sometimes, if they're comfortable, I'll go with them to their doctor or their physiotherapist because I want to make sure I understand the disease and its progression. I want to understand their medication and its relation to an elevated heart rate, or anything that we're going to be doing, and their interactions with each other. And as their medications change, I want to know about that. I think what I've really learned is you have to listen to what they're not telling you. Because for someone who's lived with chronic illness their whole life, it's their normal and they forget. It sounds crazy, but they might forget, oh yeah, that's wrong too, and this is broken, and that doesn't work, and sometimes this happens. So I have to listen to what they're not saying and ask all those questions. And I think listening is probably the most important throughout all the training with them. It wasn't even that long ago, last fall, a client of mine was just saying random things like, oh, she was tired and her shoulder kind of hurt, and she went for a walk and after 5 minutes had to stop. And like, she's telling me all these little things throughout our session. And then the next time I saw her, I kind of followed up. How is this? How is that? And then I finally said, I feel like you need to see your doctor and we shouldn't train today. Long story short, she had emergency surgery the next day and had a 90% blockage in her heart. So had we gone forward and kept training, like who knows what would have happened. But like, I'm really thankful I took the time to like, oh, I'm sorry you didn't sleep well, and just keep going, but like ask more. So I think in that demographic, yes, it's higher risk. It's also higher reward, but you got to ask a lot of questions. So that's probably the biggest part that I really time.
And you're probably, so like, I think it makes a ton of sense when you're like, yeah, you have to listen. Like what I know of you as a friend and a colleague and whatever, you're an incredible listener. I know this is even kind of funny because I'm the one asking you questions and it's usually the other way around.
Yes.
This is really good. But like we even talk about it in like the first week of class. We talk about levels of listening, and empathetic listening is sort of like that gold standard. But like when we look at the difference between maybe a trainer getting started in the industry in their 20s and a client in their 40s, 50s, 60s, or beyond, like our ease of technology, how we communicate, the fact that you can say a lot of things in a stream of 6 emojis, it's almost like it's almost like a different species. We communicate in a vastly different way. And yet when you're a trainer, you have to show up and meet your client where they're at. And so if you're working with an older population, if you're working with a population that has some additional considerations around how they're going to train and exercise and manage their health, you have to practice the skill of communicating with them in the way they need. Yes. Right? So that's maybe something that some young trainers are going to want to do. Maybe that's a skill that they're going to want to develop so they can go work in that demographic. And at the same time, it's also okay if you're a young trainer right now to go, you know what, that doesn't really sound like something I'm passionate about. I want to work with younger people that are stronger. I want to work with athletes. I want to work at the peak of human performance. That's totally fine. Like part of what I think we learn in our career is like, who is our ideal client? Like you said, when you start, you take everybody, but at a certain point you find who you identify with a little bit better, you find who you connect with a little bit better, and then you can go build a skill set in a business that really supports that group of people. You don't
Mhm.
have to be mediocre at everything. You
Yeah.
probably want to move towards being good at one or two things, because
Yeah.
then you get that referral and that word of mouth and that
Mhm.
ability to really create your business in a way that allows you to do what you do.
I
So,
think, sorry.
oh, go ahead. Awesome.
I
Go ahead.
think it's really important for all of us to know what we don't know, especially with that demographic. So when they come to me and say, like, I have this disease that I've never heard of, and I have no kneecaps, and like, I know that I can't help that person. That is not my specialty. I know other people are going to be better. So like, know what you don't know. I think for that demographic, it's also really important to make it a safe space, because chronic illness and getting old is hard, and there's some really deeply intimate personal things that happen to your body. So they have to tell me about some of that. And I've lived some of it, so I get it, and I can be really understanding and patient, but you have to be able to let them say those things without feeling shame or embarrassment of any kind. And that takes practice. Like you don't want to like have a face of like, I can't believe you just said that. You know what I mean? Like they have to feel safe. And like, for example, I understand the desperation that people can reach because I've been there. So like a client had said to me how she was feeling about just being alive. And she said, you're the only person I can say that to, because you understand what I'm saying. I'm not suicidal, but I'm here. But if she tells her family, they freak out. So you really got to listen and make it safe for them. Yeah.
So that leads me to ask, there's kind of two more big questions that I want to ask, and that's a nice segue into one of them. What do you wish gym members, gym staff, trainers, like people in the fitness space, what do you wish that they knew about people's needs who pursue fitness but have to manage illness or pain or some kind of limitation? What do you wish they knew in terms of making the space safer, more comfortable, more welcoming? What could we do as fitness professionals to just keep ourselves open to helping those people?
Mm-hmm. Lots of things. I think one that really gets me is, all the Pinterest quotes and the memes that are like, go hard or go home, or the only thing standing in front of your goal is you. And like all of those, they don't apply. And it makes those people feel so defeated, because it's not true. For them, they're not in their way. Their illness is in their way between that goal. And go hard or go home could send them into a 6-month flare. Like, so don't say those. Don't say those memes. Don't shout at them, come on, 10 more. Like if they just told you that they didn't sleep well last night, like again, that comes into listening. So that's one that kind of gets under my skin. I made notes on this one.
Yeah.
So listen, don't say those things, like those memes. Don't ramp it up. Not everyone goes to the gym because they want to lose weight. So like I've had trainers ask me like, can I help you? Like, do you have any weight you want to lose? And I look at them like, unless someone says to you that's their goal, like I don't think we need to bring that up. So when someone's in a chronic illness state, it's usually the opposite. They're trying not to lose weight because they tend to undereat and they're not hydrated and all of those things. So don't assume that that goal is about appearance. That's a side effect of their training. But for older adults in chronic illness, it comes down more to being able to live your life, get off a couch, get out of a car, get out of bed, get off the toilet, those sorts of things. And that's why they're coming. Like teaching someone how to do a squat could be the difference between them staying home one more year and going in a nursing home. Like something so simple as that. And you also, I've learned to, I don't know, tell me what you think about this. I've had to let go a little bit of perfect form because they can't. So I have to weigh benefit to risk. Like benefit, okay, if I can get them strong enough to get out of their car, there's a big benefit there. But is it going to hurt them, is the form that bad that it's going to cause some damage? So that's something I've had to kind of look over, and that's a little bit hard. I think if I was working in a facility, I find that even harder because there's other trainers around, and my insecure self would be like, okay, they're looking at me and they know that's wrong and I know that's wrong, but they're still doing it. And like, you know, so I don't know, that's something that I had to let go of. So if a trainer has an older client for the first time, that may be something we want to think about. There's also really simple things like talk slower. They can't always hear. The background noise in the gym is really, really hard for a lot of people with hearing problems. Find a quieter spot, talk loud enough so they can hear you, but most of them don't want to even be at the gym. I think that's why I end up with clients at home, is because they're not comfortable there. It doesn't suit them. It's just there's too much. Older adults and people who are chronically ill also get overstimulated really, really easily. And their nervous system's already jacked. So you go into a gym and there's loud music and there's people everywhere and you're yelling at them, 5 more reps, like they get overstimulated and very overwhelmed. So like, slow it down. Not everybody wants that hype man energy. You know what I mean? So like, just tone it down a little bit. What else did I want to say? Oh, be willing to learn a new way. So what I mean by that is, like, I had a client who I was with her from 80 to 85 years old. So she had dementia, and towards the end, she had hip surgery and was in a wheelchair. So I had to be creative and learn a new way to help her gain strength than what I'd ever learned before. So getting someone stronger when they're in a wheelchair is a whole new thing. So there's not a lot of resources online, so you have to just be creative. Another thing that really helped me is shadowing an occupational therapist at the hospital who worked with older adults, if you can find someone who's willing. So that same lady, she had me 2 days a week, and she had an occupational therapist 2 days a week, and we were both privately hired. The hospital doesn't have that for them. So on the days that he was working with her, I would go as well. So if you can shadow someone who has more of a, I don't want to say rehab, but kind of, I mean, she was rehabbing from hip surgery. So between him and I, we were trying to help her walk. So learning a new way that you weren't taught in school and maybe no one else has done. So that's one. I think that's it.
I love it. And I'm sure it's sort of like that in life, on the job kind of experience that you really can't read in a book. Even if you did read it in a book, it doesn't translate as well until you actually do it. What I think of is I worked with most of the people watching this video are going to know my success story champion from a year or so ago. Like wanted to get back into her sport and was overcoming sort of stroke-like symptoms from a brain tumor. And like her grip on one side was an issue. So, we think about like, well, you want to get a stronger upper body, pick up dumbbells. Well, this hand can't, and this hand can't really. So what do? We had to get creative. We literally were like MacGyvering like the ankle strap of the cable machine to be able to do like cable checking, you know what I mean? And I think the reason why, the physical transformation is great. There's an element of our job that is, hey, that's what I'm going to deliver. But the way that you get there with someone that has some considerations or needs some extra care is you have to build the relationship. You have to listen, you have to empathize, you have to build trust, you have to be willing to check in. And you said this to me the other day. It's like they're the expert in their issue. You're an expert in something, but they're the expert in their issue. And if you don't learn from the expert, then you're not going to do as well. So learning and asking questions and reading up and, hey, I had an idea. Let's try this. Here's what I think it should, feel like or look like. Let's try it. Tell me how you feel. Is there something we could do to modify it to make it better? Like it ends up being a way more collaborative client trainer relationship. And it has to be, because that's giving them the confidence that you're adapting to their needs instead of this is the way. Nope,
Mhm.
we're going to find your way. And it's
Yeah.
really, really rewarding work. It also
Yeah.
takes a lot more energy. And like you said, you want to do the best possible work you can with each
Mhm.
person. This isn't a volume uh,
No.
sort of, this isn't a volume section of the business. This has to be a more, individualized, personalized, empathetic based business. So if we're talking to some people who are sort of picking up what we're putting down, and they're like, yeah, I totally get it, and I really want to help people that way, and that whether it's a personal experience or a family member where they're like, oh my God, I wish someone had been able to help that person the way
Mhm.
that you're talking about it. Obviously we're talking about shadowing and listening and experience and soft skills, but there are also probably some resources that you can avail yourself of to learn in this direction.
Yeah.
So, are there any certifications, any resources, whether it's Instagram or a certain person, a website, like, are there any resources
Mhm.
that you think would be really helpful for any trainers out there that are maybe interested in moving in this direction?
There are some. There's not enough. There really isn't. So I took all of the available courses with the certified board that I'm certified with on older adults, and they were good enough. I didn't learn what I'd hoped I would learn. You learn what you expect, like, okay, these are the safe heart rates, these are the safe rep ranges, here's some ideas for different exercises. But again, that their older adult was like maybe 60s. You get to 75, 85, it's quite a bit different. And I shouldn't say that, like, one 85-year-old can be completely different from another. Like my mom's 85 and my client with dementia was 85, and it's like 30-year age difference, you would guess, in their ability. So there's not enough education resources available. Um, I think nothing really beats one like first-hand experience. Like you can't anticipate the limits a person has unless you're already an old person or you've already trained with them. Like I wouldn't have anticipated how bad arthritis can be, and that someone can't. Not only can they not grip, they can't actually open their hand. So I don't have a recommendation. You can write some.
Well, careful, because my next statement was going to be that maybe we're going to have to collaborate and put something out there, because
Yeah.
what's great is people are getting older now
Mm.
than they ever were, and more of our population is older than we've ever seen before,
Yeah.
and it's a demographic in fitness that has time and has need,
Hmm.
and potentially has the resource to be able to
Yeah.
prioritize some care for themselves. And I think it's becoming more and more, I think it's getting more exposure that if you eat
Hmm.
well and exercise and take care of yourself, that you'll have a better aging experience. And so the idea that we have a lot of power to affect our own future, I think that's becoming more and more known, right?
Hmm.
So the more sort of the middle generation watches their parents age and or has to care for them, and the more younger people see their parents caring for their grandparents, you know what I mean? The more
Yeah.
aware we are of the fact that, like, our medical system is keeping us alive for longer, and it's
Hmm.
and it's helping
Yeah.
live with diseases longer that in the
Hmm.
past you
Yeah.
just would have died at a younger age. Well,
Yeah.
that means that now there's a different need
Hmm.
for what life looks like in those stages, right? So maybe one of the takeaways from our conversation here is like, hey, we have to be better at serving a population that's
Yeah.
moving in this direction, and maybe we need some resources that actually give us
Hmm.
the critical thinking and the sort of soft skills that we need to be able to work with that group.
One thing that I had, sorry, one thing that I really had to also throw out aside from perfect form was actual programming itself, like how we learned, like when I first started and you have an athlete, like so much fun, right? Like you're programming a periodized program with your macro, meso, microcycles and all of that, right? Like it's a lot of fun. But I can't even really write down like an 8-week program because it's so far from linear. Like it's so far. Like I'll have a client and you're going like up, 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 and then it's just straight drop and you start all over again. And it's like that over and over. So I'll have an outline and I want to get them from A to B. And that could take all year considering, you know, maybe they had a surgery, which happens a lot, things like that. So I'll have in my mind the outline of what I want to do. And then you get there and every single time I have to do an intake. Like, did you sleep last night? What did you eat yesterday? Are you hydrated? Are you in pain? Are you in a flare? Do you feel inflamed? Once I go down that checklist, then I have to take the outline of the program in my head and work it around the answers that they just gave me. So that's another, I wish there was more resources on that, on how to actually do the programming. I mean, now I feel comfortable with it, but when I first started it, I was so stuck in the way I learned that it wasn't working. And so I'd get there and I'm frustrated and be like, well, you should be able to do 15 squats. You did 14 last week. Like, you know what I mean? So that's a big change too. That was a big adjustment.
Yeah, for sure. Well, one of the things that I think we're getting better at least on the education side of things, is we're teaching a standard and then this regression progression model.
Mm-hmm.
So I would hope that we've gotten a little bit better at arming personal trainers that are first getting started with at least a little bit of like that sort of sliding, like there's lots of ways to squat. Some of them are easier and some of them are harder. And you might sort of imagine that you could start from here, but then based on what you see, you've got to back it down a little bit. So like, hopefully we're getting better at things like that. Cause I think that does help with programming. I even say in class, you know, I'll have my 4 or 5 warm-up movements and I'll just put like dead bug variation. I don't know what they're going to be able to do today. Maybe it's just a hold, maybe it's a crazy banded with a kettlebell, something. But like when we have categories and we can sort of move the sliding scale, I think that's definitely a way of helping. So then, you know, when we say, what could we work on to help this population? There's a couple of things that I even thought of that I would mention to you, and you can, you know, agree or disagree. But like one of the things that just based on how resources are growing for us, and Lindy talked about it a little bit too on our first chat. You've got to get better at asking questions so that you can listen. So that if you suck at asking questions, if you have no questions in your brain that you can ask, one of the ways that you can get better at that is listen to other people ask questions. So things like interview podcasts, things like, you know, this type of resource, I'm finding is raising my literacy in asking questions. And listening is such an important skill. But if I just go, hi, how are you? And then wait, I don't really necessarily have anything to listen to. So there's this other component to listening, which is like, I have to move the conversation in the direction that's going to give me the answers that I need. So getting better at asking questions might start by listen to people asking great questions. So that could be one step. As much as you wouldn't necessarily expect a podcaster to interview someone about like health intake questions, at least you're listening to someone ask questions. So that's one thing. I do think the certifications, as much as they're not everything, I think they're a place to start. And, you know, we underestimate the heart rate zones and the rep ranges and the amount of physical exertion. We underestimate the importance of that, because by the time we get to where you and I are, they're so ingrained. It's like, well, duh. You have to start by learning them, right? So, you know, as much as sometimes the formalized education doesn't really feel like the meat and potatoes that we're looking for, they are still important parameters that then we have to bring to life, right? So again, it's a place to start. And then the third thing that I was thinking of is like, we all have friends, family, relatives, neighbors, whatever, in varying degrees of functional capability. And maybe more so now than ever, because we're at home and we're stuck in smaller places. Maybe what that gives you the opportunity to do is like get to know the people that are closer to you at a deeper level. I've been really proud of seeing things like younger trainers saying like, hey, I'm in this area. If you have a friend or a family member that needs some help, you know, I'd be happy to connect with them. I can drop off groceries or whatever. So like we are an industry of people that like helping people. So that's a really
Yeah.
good start. We're not in training because we're going to make 6 figures and retire early and buy a private island. We're in fitness because we're passionate about it and we like helping people. When you
Yeah.
take our gyms away, what's been really cool to see is like people are still trying to figure out how to help. I
Yeah.
don't know if we're all getting it right. I don't know that 30-minute live streaming hit videos every day is the best kind of help for everybody. I think you're going to help somebody with that, but
Yeah.
it might not be the be all and the end all. But then if you go have dinner with your family and your aunt is there and she's talking about, you know, her health or her knee or her, this happened or that happened, like you can learn just from the people around you. And the benefit is you care about them, they care about you, you've already got some kind of relationship. It might feel like a more comfortable place to learn and ask questions, right? And I'm not saying force help on people that aren't asking for it, but learn from the people around you to widen your understanding of what people are going through, right?
Yeah.
So I say all the time, I don't train family because the relationship isn't what I want a client trainer relationship to be, but it doesn't mean I don't ask questions and listen and then go away and imagine stuff. And then maybe I can translate that to someone who actually wants my help or that is asking, right? So lean into being human. Like I think that was why I wanted to have this conversation with you, is because more than anything, more than how you train, more than what your job is, more than what progressions of exercise you take in the group class, the thing that you lead with everywhere you go is being just a really incredible human. And that allows us to do the other things that we want to do, right? So when you go through something like what you have, when you have experience doing the work that you have, you lean into and you learn how to hold space and like empathize to people's discomfort and ask the right questions and be creative and ultimately try to find a solution for them because you care about them.
Yeah.
So anything you can do that allows you to lean into being more human is going to help you train people with the need to be seen and heard as an individual instead of client number 4 out of 8 in a row, right?
Absolutely. I always say listen with the purpose to understand. And if you don't understand, keep asking questions till you do.
Love it.
And
That's
you
such
don't
a
have,
great.
you come to a spot where you understand whatever that person's trying to communicate. That doesn't mean you have to necessarily like mesh on that point or agree on that point. But if you can understand each other, that's a huge, huge step in building a relationship with somebody.
You got it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for this. I feel like sometimes it's hard to talk about stuff like this in a formalized education setting. I think about, teaching my students, and sometimes I want to go on a rant like this and I'm like, but that's not what's on the syllabus today. Like I have to get through these certain, components of the curriculum. But it is really important to have conversations like this. And if anything, if we just crack open someone's mind a little bit and get them to consider something that they didn't necessarily consider before, that crack lets the light in, and that means we have the opportunity to go seek out some additional resources or assistance, get curious, ask questions, or whatever it is. And so I think that's really awesome. I know you do small work exceptionally well. I know that you're not really into, tons of exposure. So I thank you for sharing this with us. I think it's really generous of you just to be able to share that story and that little bit of information. And I love how it just makes the science of what we do come to life in a more human and emotionally rewarding way, because I think there's a ton of impact there. So you do that exceptionally well, and I'm honored to have you as a friend and a colleague, and thank you for putting your face on the screen so that we could hang out for a little bit. I'm going to post this one, and I wouldn't say chase her down because she's busy taking care of a few really special people, but I hope you take an example of the work that Jolaine does and where she's coming from when she does her work. And I hope that maybe you find a way to lean into that part of yourself as being a fitness professional and a friend and a supporter and a cheerleader for someone who really needs it, just to be able to move and prioritize their own health and find a way to make some progress, even though it's maybe not what they want or wish for, but it's progress nonetheless. And it makes a really big difference to have a partner in making that progress. So if you go this direction, if you're looking to move in this direction, you've got some great role models that are out doing great work in a quiet, incredibly rewarding way. So thank you to you, Jolaine, for sharing that today. Thank you.
You're so great at opening up conversations, and so thank you for that.
Oh, so much love. All right, I'm gonna shut off this recording. Thanks a lot, guys.